What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. We're back checking out some of the teams that have been named for the Six Nations. So far I've only done the Wales team. I tried to put that up a little bit earlier. I've had a load of issues uploading stuff to YouTube, so goodness knows when you've received that one first before this one. So we're going to move on to England today. So Eddie Jones, of course, came out winning the Six Nations last year and then went on to win the Autumn Nations Cup. He will be in pole position to do some real good work, but he's been met by a few blockades himself. I read a couple of weeks back about that he was only going to be allowed to pick a 28-man squad going into this tournament as opposed to the rest that are allowed to go way over 30 people. So he's got a bit of a condensed team, which has left some interesting choices. So first of all, let's check out the forwards. There's been a lot of changes from this initial team, so I'll go through them as we're going. So first of all, Joe Marler was named, who has dropped out very recently, and as far as I can find out, he hasn't actually been replaced per se. There is a shadow team sort of in the background that I'm sure Eddie Jones can choose from, but as officially he hasn't actually been replaced for as far as I can find. Anyway, also we've got Beno Obano, who I'm looking forward to seeing. Probably in that number one position, I imagine he'll take over. I have seen things about that he could play 1 or 3, but I imagine he would go in at 1. Looking forward to seeing Obano back in. I think he's played some good games at club level, so it'll be nice to see him carry on. Ellis Genge, of course, the Rhino that just charges through everyone. I'm sure he'll get some real good time. Luke Cowan-Dickey, Jamie George, a couple of good hookers in there to do a lot. Jamie George, of course, getting his hat-trick. The first England hooker to ever get a hat-trick in the Autumn Nations Cup. They'll be looking to do some pretty good work up front. And then Will Stewart and Harry Williams also in there. So they've got a lot going on here in terms of the front row. A lot of sort of interchangeability here. So I think they're going to be looking to try and go big, heavy pack. As you can see the difference that's probably going to come in. They've named a lot of forwards considering they're only allowed to have 28 men. So they're definitely going to push this forwards group a hell of a lot. I think they're going to want to try and overpower teams this year rather than trying to run tries around them. Carrying on, we have Joe Launchbury, who has dropped out fairly recently, similar to Joe Marler. I haven't been able to find out whether there was an injury involved in that or whether he just dropped out for other reasons, so Joe Launchbury won't be going in. As far as I'm aware, I haven't heard anything about that they've actually replaced him with anyone. Again, that's going to be a shadow team thing, I imagine. Courtney Laws, who is going to be interesting to see Courtney Laws back in the team. Feel like I haven't read that name on a team sheet for a little while, so it'll be nice to see him coming back in. Johnny Hill, who I'm expecting will probably have a nice tournament. He actually probably get a bit of game time now with people like Joe Launchbury, and of course Maro Itoje is next on the list. He can play 4 or 5 sometimes, so they'll probably switch up. There'll probably be some good time to get some different locks in. I'm sure Eddie Jones will want to switch it up a bit and test out some new methods. Will Stewart, of course, going to be coming in as well. Looking forward to seeing him. Mark Wilson, who is a very strong contender. I'm going to look forward to see. I think he can play either 7 or 8. So again, there's a little bit of interchangeability there. I think that's going to be what Eddie Jones has gone for. Picking players that can play more than one position, but not necessarily having a specialised position. So I think they'll probably help him with picking less players. Sam Underhill is another one who's had to drop out recently because of an injury. And Sam Underhill is actually going to be replaced with Jack Willis, who did have a good couple of games that I've seen him in, so looking forward to seeing Jack Willis do a bit. Of course, Tom Curry has to be in that list. Tom Curry, I think, is probably one of the best flankers in the world, just in terms of technical ability, in terms of tackling and turnovers. I think he's absolutely superb. He has to be right up there. And of course, Billy Vunipola, can't leave out the big man in number 8. So it's going to be a bit of a condensed team. He seems to have loaded that front pack an awful lot in terms of the front row. Using 5 or 6 players out of his 28-man squad just to cover that front row. So one thing that Eddie Jones will be looking at here is to try and avoid injuries, and they've already had a couple of people drop out, so I'm sure they'll try and find some strong replacements of those closer to the tournament beginning. We'll check out the backs. Big choice here to go for 3 scrum halves, which is what I wasn't expecting from Eddie Jones. We know he's been in the past big on picking just 2 scrum halves and focusing quite heavily on them. So Ben Young's, the standard England scrum half, been a bit hit or miss recently, but he didn't have a terrible Autumn Nations Cup. Dan Robson is improving. Looking forward to seeing a bit more of Dan Robson. Actually, be nice to see him start some games as opposed to Ben Young's. Normally, Dan Robson seems to be the finisher. And Harry Randall, who seems to be coming in the papers from out of nowhere almost. Looking forward to him making his debut in this England pack. He seems to be an absolutely rapid scrum half. I imagine he's going to be running all over the field. Of course, we've got Owen Farrell in that fly half numbers, but he could well end up playing 12 as he normally does when they have George Ford also in the team, normally taking that 10 position. Of course, Max Malins. It would just be nice to see Max Malins play. I feel really bad for the guy. He seems to come on in about the 78th minute to take over from George Ford. So hopefully he can have some decent game time. The back line is really condensed here, so this is going to be an interesting one. So let me run through these right at the back line. So we've got Johnny May, Ollie Lawrence, Paulo Udogwu, who we're going to be really looking forward to see in this tournament, I think, Henry Slade, Anthony Watson and Elliot Daly. The thing that jumps out to me here most is there seems to be a back three here that is completely based around speed. So what I think has happened here is that Eddie Jones has obviously had to have a condensed team. He can't have a lot of people in certain specialised area. If you actually look at this, like on paper, you've got Anthony Watson and Johnny May, the only official wingers that are going to be in this team. So injuries obviously could be a potential issue. So I think adding in Ollie Lawrence, who is a rapid player, we haven't got to see an awful lot of him. I do feel he's another one I feel bad for. Seems to come on towards the end of the match and can't quite make a big enough impact. So hopefully Ollie Lawrence can see him do a little bit more. I've had to look up Paulo Udogwu. I don't know him a lot. I don't watch a lot of the Premiership rugby, so I've had a look at some of his highlights, and man, can that guy run quick. He's an X7s player, but he's built like a prop. I have no idea how that physics works, but he looks like a monster. I think he's going to do some big work. He normally plays 13. I'm not sure if he can play 12, so he'll most likely probably fill in that 13, and I imagine, as Eddie Jones likes to do, we'll move Owen Farrell into 12. Maybe a dog will go into 13. Henry Slade I rate very, very highly, but I don't think a lot of people give him credit for the work he does. I think he's a big background work. He's sort of like a shadow player to Owen Farrell, almost doing like an Owen Farrell job in that 13 channel. I think it's going to work very well. Anthony Watson hasn't actually impressed me an awful lot very recently. I don't know what sort of happened to his game. He seems to be doing absolutely awesome at club level, and as soon as he gets into that international, no one seems to want to give him the ball, and as soon as it works its way out to his wing, finally he seems to have about a yard of room before getting tackled, which would be a little bit unfortunate to him. And of course Elliot Daly then to finish it off with that 15, the classic number 15 they always have in that team. But of course, so to actually look at here, only one fullback. I believe Max Malins can also go to fullback if needed, but I think Elliot Daly there is a pretty standout fullback. So if I was any teams going into this tournament, I would be targeting Elliot Daly from the onset to try and throw their team off a little bit. So that's the team on a whole. It's going to be a very condensed England team. I'm going to look forward to this. He's actually got more uncapped players playing in this Six Nations than Eddie Jones put on for the Autumn Nations Cup, which I think is a big decision. I probably would have got some people some experience back then. Maybe this gives them a higher level of experience, maybe in the Six Nations. They get to play a couple of games in Twickenham, so maybe they're going to hopefully get a few more games in for some of their players to gain a bit more experience, but I think they'll be able to do pretty well. It's not as strong as I thought it would be, and with other players dropping out already, it's going to be interesting to see how they get on, whether they're going to be able to see it through. So what I thought we'd do, as we did in the last video, we will combine them and we'll see what the best 15 I think I could come up with for this team. So let's check on screen my best team. So starting in the front row, Ellis Genge, you've got to have that rhino of a man in there. He just charges through tackles. Looking forward to seeing him do a lot of positive attacking work, so I think Ellis Genge has to go, and he's probably the most attacking prop I've ever seen in rugby. He's so aggressive. I do like it. He's going to be a bit of a handful to deal with. Jamie George going to be my number 2. You can't have the hat-trick man and not put him in your team. He's doing really well recently, especially in scrums and of course in that maul work. You know how good he is getting those tries from the maul. Eddie Jones does love that setup. Will Stewart I've picked as my number 3. I would love to see a bit more of Will Stewart. Again, he's another one that seems to come on the bench an awful lot. I'd like to see him actually start a game and get it on a little bit. I think he's a very strong player. He's a very strong tackler. He did very well in that final game versus France. I'm looking forward to see Will Stewart get a bit of game time. Courtney Laws, we got to love a bit of Courtney Laws. Very strong when it comes to lineouts. I think now he'll jump at this opportunity now with Launchbury out. Launchbury's been doing really well recently. And of course, Maro Itoje can move to 5, as I've done him in this team for me. Courtney Laws is brilliant in terms of lineouts, and of course in turnovers he's pretty good, but not as good as Maro Itoje, who is phenomenal. I would actually rate him as probably the best player on this English team. I think Maro Itoje is an absolute superstar, so looking forward to seeing a lot more from him. My back 3 here, Tom Curry I think has to go in at my number 6. Of course, Tom Curry has been sort of being a bit of training in 6, 7 and 8, but Tom Curry for me just does so well in that 6 channel. Sam Underhill's come in and sort of taken that 6 channel away from him, so he's been doing a lot more 7 from what people have seen. Of course, 6 and 7 is a little bit more interchangeable than when they play him at 8, so I'm going to move Tom Curry into my 6, moving Mark Wilson into that 7 channel. He's a big boy. I think he'll be able to do an awful lot for this team. He's just a big tackler. Not necessarily technical ability as similar level of Tom Curry, but having a big, strong tackler at 7 and having Tom Curry be able to get over the ball in the double tackles, I think will work really well. And of course, Billy Vunipola. There's only real 2 number 8s in this team in Mark Wilson and Billy Vunipola, and Billy Vunipola is a specialist 8, so I've got to put Billy Vunipola there. Ben Youngs is going to be the standout 9. I think he's still doing just good enough to hold out against Dan Robson. I don't think Dan Robson's had enough game time for me to be able to see him really excel in international yet. Ben Youngs is pretty safe, and his box kicks are actually some of the best in international rugby out of most scrum halves that just seem to kick them every which way. Ben Youngs is a little bit more consistent than most. I've decided to switch up the Eddie Jones set format for a bit of fun, so I'm going to put Owen Farrell in at my fly half. Of course, I imagine Eddie Jones will put George Ford in, but that's because I want to try and open this centre partnership up a little bit. So I'm going to put Owen Farrell in at 10, Johnny May taking that 11 position as the only real left winger in this entire team named, and then I'm going to move Henry Slade to 12. I believe Henry Slade can do 12, 13. I think he's also even played fly half at some point. So I'm going to put Henry Slade at 12, create the shadow effect of Owen Farrell, but at 12, but give you both Owen Farrell and Henry Slade to work with. And that opens up that 13 slot for Paulo Odogwu. I cannot wait to see this boy. He looks rapid. Really looking forward to see what he can do against some teams, especially when other teams have centres who don't have a lot of weight behind them and are just rapid. I'm thinking immediately of players like Gary Ringrose who are going to be trying to stop him. You know, a very quick player who picks good lines, but necessarily defensively can be a bit shaky. So I think he could be able to open up some of the bigger teams. Looking forward to seeing him play. And of course, then the back 2 is there pretty much is only in this England squad named Anthony Watson taking that right wing and Elliot Daly in that back line as well. I might even switch up Odogwu to go in for Anthony Watson at that point. I'm aware he has played 14, I think, when he was playing at Wasps, from what I saw of sort of montage of his gameplay. So hopefully he'll be able to do a lot. I think he's going to be a bit of a standout player to watch for this tournament. Hopefully lives up to some of the height that he's got. But that's all I've got for today, guys. This is the England team as it's been named. This is my best team I can create from what I had to work with there. What do you guys think? Who would go into your best England team? Do you think this is the best team that Eddie Jones could pick? Who would you be in your starting 15? Make sure you drop it down in the comments. I love reading all what people have to say about rugby talks. It's some of my favourite subjects to get into. If you have enjoyed this video, guys, make sure to drop it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be doing one of these for every single team as we're going through. So make sure you subscribe to keep up to date with all the latest videos as they are coming out. That's all for me today, guys. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.